It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome to Rico Brogna, another edition in which we will whine, complain, and bitch and ask ourselves, what have we done to deserve this? The New York Mets do not end up with Kyle Tucker, which I don't think is a major surprise. But nevertheless, over the last few days, we got excited. We talked ourselves into it. We talked ourselves into believing that Kyle Tucker could help salvage what has been an all-time disappointing New York Mets offseason. And not only do the New York Mets not sign Kyle Tucker, but yes, he's a Dodger. He's an LA Dodger on a 4-year, $240 million deal. If he had signed with the Blue Jays on some kind of 9-year deal or 10-year deal, we would have said, okay, he wanted a long-term contract, and clearly the Mets were never going to play in that land, and so what can you do? But instead, the LA Dodgers took our model, the model of we will grossly overpay on a short-term deal, and they outmatched the Mets. They out-Cohened the Cohens. Because this short-term, high AAV deal, something they've done in the past, at least they did with Verlander and Scherzer, very different situations, but nevertheless did it. This was our formula to making everybody happy. Adding a big bat to this lineup to help replace the loss of Pete Alonso. Not be locked in for an absurd amount of years. And sure, pay a tax in terms of a high AAV, but get the player you want. And you just knew in the back of your mind the LA Dodgers would be lurking. The final deal with the Dodgers and Tucker is 4 years, $240 million. The Mets offered 4 years, $220 million. There are opt-outs after year 2 and 3, which apparently the Mets had offered as well. There's a $64 million signing bonus. The Mets offered $75. And the Mets technically got beaten in the offer, but the Mets actually offered more in the short term. If you assume Kyle Tucker's going to opt out after 2 years, which may be his plan, then the Mets made a bigger offer than the Los Angeles Dodgers. So the question is, how do I feel this morning as we record this Rico Brogna at about 7:45 in the morning? And yes, I got the news in the morning. I decided to go to sleep at an early time, a reasonable time. Why did I go to sleep? Because I wanted to wake up and watch the Knicks on DVR. Screw the Knicks. Screw Karl Anthony Towns. Screw Mike Brown. By the way, what a waste of time that game was. And so I was not a part of all the, I guess, the anger and the angst from the night. But I woke up to the news that Kyle Tucker is an LA Dodger. And here's my honest reaction. I'm disappointed they didn't get him. I laugh at the absurdity of the LA Dodgers. But my anger, because I am pissed, my anger is not at missing out on Kyle Tucker. My anger isn't, ooh, they should have offered $65 million a year for Kyle Tucker. That's not my anger. My anger is that we're in this position to begin with. That's my anger. My anger is, as we sit here in the middle of January and appealing items in free agency are falling off the shelves, we have a lesser roster and a lesser lineup than we had last year, and last year we collapsed. Now, baseball doesn't work that way, obviously. You can't just say the roster is worse, will be worse. So I get that, and we'll talk more about that as we get closer to the start of the season. But if you ask me, just, okay, Ev, raw emotion, how do you feel? I'm angry about the offseason. I'm disappointed about the offseason. I don't feel great about this team. I would have felt a lot better if they won this sweepstakes. I would have gladly had the arguments with Met fans and non-Met fans about overpaying for Kyle Tucker on a short-term deal. I welcomed those debates because pound for pound, adding the certainty of Kyle Tucker to this lineup in an outfield that literally features one everyday starter right now in Juan Soto would have made this team significantly better. We can parse and argue the contract and if it's an overpay and all that kind of stuff. This would have made them better, and they didn't get him. Should Steve Cohen and David Stearns have gotten further or gone further on Kyle Tucker? Look, we had gotten to levels of absurdity on this contract that, sure, We're paying a lot of money for tickets. Sure, Steve Cohen, give him $70 million a year. Why stop now? Yeah, we could argue that. But that's not my anger. Like, I'm not going to sit here getting pissed off that they didn't offer more money for Kyle Tucker. They offered a massive contract for Kyle Tucker. Now, that doesn't exonerate my feelings towards David Stearns and Steve Cohen. Maybe my feelings in this individual move and this individual miss, but this offseason has sucked. This offseason has been a massive disappointment. This offseason, and it's not just me saying it, you'll see it based on ticket sales to start this upcoming year, this offseason has been all-time bad. Now, the beauty of sports is that sometimes you have a bad offseason and you win anyway, and vice versa. You have a great offseason like, I don't know, signing Juan Soto and keeping Pete Alonso, and you have a terrible season. I get that. I understand that. And you'll get rational Evan as we get closer to the start of the season. But on this day, in the middle of January, with Pete Alonso in Baltimore, with Kyle Schwarber in Philadelphia, with Okamoto. Where the hell did he sign again? Oh, yeah, Toronto. I don't feel good. I don't feel good about the current state of this lineup. I don't feel good about the current state of this roster overall. And this was the kind of power move that I think would have not just won back the fan base, because that kind of stuff is minimal. Sure, you win back the fan base for a few months, you sell a few more tickets to begin with, but ultimately you have to win. You've got to build the right team. But this kind of move would have gone a long way towards building the right team. And they lost. And it is a gentle reminder that while, yes, we have a big market owner, yes, this isn't the Wilpons anymore, we are not the Dodgers. We wanted to be the Dodgers. We dream of being the Dodgers. We're not. And there are some aspects of the Dodgers we'll never be. We'll never be Southern California. And I get that. If someone wants to play in a climate like Los Angeles, California, there ain't a damn thing we can do to change that. But where we're also not the LA Dodgers, and we'll get into why Kyle Tucker made this decision and if the Mets were used, because I do have an opinion on that. What we're not is a guaranteed playoff team. What we're not is a soft landing spot. And that's what the Dodgers are. Kyle Tucker goes to LA, and you can write it down. He's getting October baseball. He's in a better lineup with a chance to put up better numbers, with a chance to opt out and get a massive contract. While we have good players on our team, don't get me wrong, and while we have a roster that is still better than half the National League, we're not the Dodgers. And as much as Steve Cohen said we want to be the Dodgers, and as much as I want them to be the Dodgers, and you want them to be the Dodgers, until further notice, and that further notice is going to take a while, we're not even close. We're not. And so once the Dodgers were involved heavily enough to be making offers in and around us, I never thought he was going to pick us. I never had that confidence. Because I always looked at this as a Dodger, Blue Jay, Met race, the way it's been reported the last few weeks, and I always wondered why he would pick us. We're coming off of failures. We're New York where the pressure is high. And so unless no doubt is left on the contract, why is he picking us? Now, did Kyle Tucker use the New York Mets? It is absolutely fair to think that way. That was kind of my first reaction. My understanding is, and if this was being done as a cover or as a foil, good for the Tuckers. But apparently the Kyle Tucker family was like interested in coming to New York. And there were a lot of discussions with, Alex Cohen and Steve Cohen, ownership involvement in terms of, yeah, I'd come here. Where would I live? Things like that. I don't think you do that unless you're serious about it. So here's what I'm going to surmise about what happened. This is my, educated guess. And at the end of the day, who gives a crap? He's not a Met, right? I mean, whether they were used or not used, at the end of the day, the guy said no gracias, right? My belief and guess is that Toronto was used. My guess and belief is that he never wanted to go to Canada, which was reported by a few others. I think the Blue Jays were the used here. Because if they were making an 8, 9, 10-year offer, even if it was $37 million a year, which is far lower in terms of AAV than what the Mets and Dodgers offered, you still get the security of a long-term deal. So I think the Blue Jays were used, and I think that the Mets were viable until the Dodgers came close and beat our offer. And technically, like I said at the top, did they beat our offer? Yes. They didn't beat it in terms of Tucker opting out. Over the course of the 4-year contract, the Dodgers beat the offer. I mean, higher AAV, the whole thing. I know there's deferred money in it, but at the end of the day, if he lives out the entire 4-year contract, which is on the table, the Dodgers beat the Mets. If he's opting out after 2 years, the Mets beat the Dodger offer because the Mets front-loaded the offer. The Mets offered him $60 million a year. 60, 60, 50, 50. So if Kyle Tucker opts out after 2 years, and who knows, it's going to have to do with his production. It's going to have to do with the new CBA. Like, there's a lot of factors here where it's going to make it tough to predict what Tucker's going to do. But yeah, the Mets had a better offer when it comes to the short term, but we all knew this. Even with a better offer or a slightly better offer or the same offer or an offer in the same stratosphere, the Dodgers offer every other advantage that we can't compete with. We can't. We can't compete with the weather. We can't compete with Southern California if that's what you want. And more importantly, we can't compete with the certainty of what the Dodgers are. I'm a big baseball's unpredictable, you never know kind of guy, and I'll always live by that, especially in October. The Dodgers by no means are a lock to win a championship, despite having a far better roster than everybody else because of the randomness of a best of 5 and a best of 7, and even this past year, a best of 3. But you know that even with injuries, the LA Dodgers are making the playoffs. And as a guy who probably does want to get back into free agency in 2 years, that enhances your resume. And this is the horrible spot we as a franchise are in. We're a big market team. We got a lot of talent. We're not the Dodgers. So I think we were used slightly, but I think there was a way he was going to come here. You know, I think if the LA Dodgers didn't go to the avenues they went, yeah, I'm kind of starting to believe Tucker would have accepted our offer over the Blue Jay offer. If his family members and him and his wife are talking to ownership about what's it like to live in New York, I don't think that's a use thing. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe it was a very careful use scenario. But this is about we can't compete with the LA Dodgers. We just can't. And it sucks. And I'll talk more about this on Evan and Tiki later today because I don't want to waste your time on the Rico with this. But I do have a conspiracy theory, and I apologize if anyone else has this, if this has already been put out there. Because if it has, God bless you, maybe we're thinking alike. I kind of believe Rob Manfred loves what the Dodgers are doing. Like, he loves it. You know, the first reaction from non-Met fans, because obviously our reaction is not getting the player, is this is bad for baseball. The Dodgers are ruining baseball. I think Manfred loves it. Not that he wants baseball ruined, like John Cena's 17th title run, I want to ruin wrestling, but because he wants a salary cap. He wants a message to be sent to the players and obviously the small market owners to say, hey, this isn't sustainable. A lot of fans are going to say that today. Maybe not us, but a lot of baseball fans are going to talk about lack of sustainability in this sport because of what the LA Dodgers are doing. And I think Rob Manfred loves it. But I want to make this very, very clear to any Dodger fan who's checking out the Rico right now because you like to drink the tears of Met fans. I got nothing but respect for you bastards. I really do. I got nothing but admiration and respect. And for the kids listening, hold your ears, for you pricks in Los Angeles. Because you're everything we want to be. Everything. And I have said that consistently. Yes, I want to beat you. Yes, I'm going to hold out hope that we're the ones to do it. Do I have confidence in it? None. But you're everything we thought we would be when Steve Cohen bought the team. And there are a lot of differences. The revenue you guys bring in far exceeds the revenue of the New York Mets. The difference between Cohen spending money and the Dodgers spending money is you guys are just reinvesting your absurd amount of revenue. Cohen is spending from his own coffers. Now, he can compete with the Dodgers, but can he blow them away? Because at the end of the day, if you are a Met fan who says, hey, why didn't Cohen outbid the Dodgers? Totally fair. I've said this before. There is no salary cap, and until there is, you're my owner. You got a ton of money. I spend a lot of money on tickets. Go as far as it takes. I don't give a rat's ass. But it was going to take $65 million a year. I mean, it was just going to, I don't know what it was going to take. Because here's what's scary. Let's say the Mets did go to the Dodger Avenue and go above and beyond. The Dodgers may have moved too. This may have been one of those scenarios where the Dodgers are sitting back saying, oh, that's adorable. Okay. You want to go to 63? We'll go to 67. So let me pivot, though, from exonerating the Mets on missing Tucker, which I kind of am, to being absolutely pissed at the way this offseason has gone. And let's go back a few steps. I know I continue to say, hey, Evan, get over Pete Alonso. And emailers say, hey, Evan, get over Pete Alonso. Well, I'm not going to get over Pete Alonso today because I'll ask this question, and I don't know the answer. If you are willing to go 4 years at basically $50 million a year to Kyle Tucker, why not go 2 years, $48 million a year to Pete Alonso? See, you see what I did there? I didn't offer him the same as Tucker. I'm not getting into this argument of who's the better all-around player. We all know that. But I'm saying if you're willing to go into this short-term, massive AAV world to get the player you want because you don't want to go long-term, fine, respect. Why not try it with Pete Alonso? Would it have worked? Probably not. I'll be the first to admit. Scott Boras wanted a long-term deal. Pete wanted a long-term deal. And if the Mets weren't going to go to 5 years, they probably weren't getting Pete Alonso. But did they make the offer? I'll say it again. How about Kyle Schwarber? If this is the route you want to go, if this is the grand strategy of the Stearns-Cohen era, did you make a massive short-term offer to Kyle Schwarber? And those are the guys I mentioned because those are the big bats. Did you aggressively go after Kazumo Okamoto? I know that one doesn't fit as well, but I admit it's a player I wanted. This is why we're frustrated in the middle of January. It is not simply losing Kyle Tucker to the LA Dodgers. And I think I speak for a lot of Met fans when I say that. This is not about Kyle Tucker, which is why on its own, in talking about the Tucker loss, I think I've been pretty rational in the first 15 minutes, breaking down the offers and why we didn't get him. I'm not angry at Cohen and Stearns on Tucker. I'm angry at Cohen's and Tucker on everything else. On the fact we are in this situation. On the fact that Kyle Tucker was the last chance to quote unquote save the offseason. That's where I'm angry. That's why I'm pissed. That's why I'm worried. That's why going into spring training, which is less than a month away, it's tough to just be super confident. The pivot. That's the next step here, right? The pivot. Okay, smartass. And by smartass, I'm referring to myself. All right, smartass. As you do this Rico Brogna at 7 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it is now, what do you want to do, big shot? I will tell you what I want to do. And you talk about pivot, this is a pivot, because I promise you, if you go back to the 2 months ago Ricos where we were previewing the offseason, I wouldn't have suggested what I'm about to suggest. But life changes. Things come at you fast. And right now, here's the problem with the New York Mets. Francisco Lindor, and I'm just sticking with the lineup. We all know the pitching stuff. I'm not going to waste our time on that. We know they need to add certainty to the rotation. We know what this rotation currently has. They haven't done a damn thing to change the rotation. And we'll get to it. But in terms, and the bullpen. By the way, about the bullpen, here's how effed up this offseason is. You ready? Ready for this? As much as I would have been fuming at the idea of losing Edwin Diaz to the Dodgers and replacing him with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, I've grown to accept that and almost not be negative about it because everything else I'm so much more negative about, if that makes any sense. That's not me rationalizing Devin Williams and Luke Weaver. That's me saying that's the least of my trouble. Now, you could save that tape for when Devin Williams blows, 15 saves in a row. But let me get to the pivot. All right. In terms of free agents, you are talking about 2 impact bats that are still available in free agency. You're talking about Cody Bellinger and you're talking about Bo Bichette. Would I like Cody Bellinger? Absolutely. I just don't see a realistic avenue. And I said this a lot about Kyle Tucker, and I guess I sort of was right, but sort of wrong. Kind of like how Craig is going to claim today. He was sort of right about Kyle Tucker. He had the contract pretty much nailed, just the wrong team. I had the opposite, right? I thought Tucker wasn't going to be a Met, and I thought it was going to be because someone offers him a long-term deal. But I think I also offered that if the Dodgers are close, he'll go to L.A. So maybe I was right about Tucker. But here's where I'm at on Bellinger. I believe the reporting that there's a 5-year offer out there from the New York Yankees. The Mets are not going 5 years with Cody Bellinger. So the only way they would end up with Cody is by doing a similar thing to what they did with Kyle Tucker on a lesser scale, which is let's give him a 2-year deal with opt-outs and offer him a massive AAV. I don't know if Scott Boras is going for that. If the Yankees already have a 5-year offer out there, and we'll play this game, and the Yankees offer him 5 years, 175. Ultimately, that's where they end up, and they're steadfast. And the Mets say, all right, we're going to give you 2 years, 90. Right? We're going to give you $45 million a year, which we all agree, absurd number for Cody Bellinger, but we're playing the game of short-term high AAV. I still don't know if Scott Boras accepts that. And so between the Yankees' 5-year offer, between the Blue Jays being a real pivot point to Cody Bellinger, I don't think it's realistic that the Mets are going to sign Cody Bellinger. So let's talk Bo Bichette. The reason I kind of think this Bo Bichette thing could make sense, and this is the first time, honestly, all year I've warmed up to Bo Bichette because the entire offseason, whenever his name has come up, I've always talked about the fit. Like, where would Bo Bichette fit now that you've got Marcus Semien at second base, you have Lindor at shortstop, and you have an emerging Brett Beatty at third base? Couple of things. First of all, if Bo Bichette is the guy he was last year and the guy he was 2 years before that, basically not the guy from 24 who had a god-awful season when he missed half the year. He is an 800-plus OPS player. He is a guy who can hit for a high batting average. He's a guy who can give you 20 to 25 home runs. He's a right-hand hitter. He's different than the Pete Alonso, but he's a good, solid 3-4 win ball player. He's an upgrade over lineup-wise what they have now. Can we at least agree on that before we get to the position stuff? Right-handed bat, which was always ideal. Career 294 hitter, which is like ridiculous in 2026. I mean, who does that? Hit over 300 last year. And also struck out less than 100 times, which isn't bad. Gives you pop, but not an immense amount of pop. But really makes this lineup dangerous. You look at his history in terms of health, he's mostly been healthy. Obviously, last year he had the injury late, fought his way back, came back in the World Series. He missed half of 2024, but prior to that, played all the time. So I would almost say his injury history is similar, if not a little bit better than Kyle Tucker, just based on really the last 2 years, because I think it's actually similar the last 2 years. When you look at Bichette getting hurt late, Tucker struggled late, had his injuries, and then the year before that was basically a wash. Or a lost season. The only difference, though, was when Tucker missed half the year, he was super productive. When Bichette missed half the year, he sucked and hit 225 and had a sub-600 OPS. Not a perfect player, by the way, but this is where we are in the offseason. He's also young. He is still 27. He's going to turn 28 years old in the opening weeks of spring training. My intrigue in Bo Bichette is offering him a similar, not the same, but similar contract to Kyle Tucker. And I sell him on the exact same stuff, which is, dude, you're young, bro. You're coming off a good year. I don't want to say it's a bad year, but you're coming off a year in which you were hurt, right? It hurts your value a little bit. You're also only a year removed from the worst season of your career. Your value is not at its peak. And the other reason your value isn't at its peak, which I brought up in relation to Kyle Tucker, is that free agency in the next couple of years sucks. There's no one available. Now, Kyle Tucker obviously now is a factor in terms of re-entering free agency, but if Kyle Tucker re-enters free agency in 2 years, he's 31 years old. You, Bo Bichette, have a chance to re-enter free agency as the king of it. Now, the Phillies are interested. They are a threat, and they're probably making a long-term offer. The Blue Jays are probably going to pivot back. They're going to make a long-term offer. Should we take the Red Sox seriously? I don't know what to make of the Red Sox. They're buying pitching. They still have that gap after losing Alex Bregman. I don't know how far they're going to go. How about the New York Mets call up Bo Bichette and his agent and say, Kyle Tucker, not the same, you're not quite him, but we're going to give you a 4-year deal, opt out after year 2, so same thing, and instead of 50 a year, because that feels like a lot, we're going to give you 40 a year. Does that give them a fighting chance to acquire Bo Bichette? It also damages the Phillies. Not that that's my concern. My concern is our freaking team. But Bo Bichette on a short-term, high AAV, here's your opt-out. And if Bo Bichette has 2 monster years at age 28 and 29 and re-enters free agency as a guy who now just showed he could play third base, dude, he's going to own free agency. Then he'll get a 10-year deal and he'll go away. This is, I admit, for anyone who's a longtime Ricoer, the first time I've been drawn in by Bo Bichette, not because I'm flip-flopping, but because the offseason is occurring and guys are going away and guys who I preferred are gone. Pete Alonso is not walking through that door. Kyle Schwarber is not walking through that door. Kazumo Akamoto, who I was very drawn in by, is not walking through that door. Short-term, high AAV, Bo Bichette. Now, the follow-up. All right, Ev, well, what's the plan? Where does he fit? I think we got a couple of things we got to discuss. And yes, it does contradict the whole run prevention conversation from David Stearns because we're going to add some questions to the defense. But guess what? The lineup isn't good enough right now. So sometimes you have to make concessions to improve aspects of your team. Number one, Bo Bichette would come here and play third base right off the top. Number two, I think Brett Beatty, there were 2 options with Brett. Obviously, trading him is an option, but I'm not forcing that. I still think Beatty can have a great value on this team. Number 1, first base. Number 2, left field. He has not played first base. He has played left field. It was years ago. But if Brett Beatty, who showed he could play second, and all of you, not all of you, a lot of you were very skeptical about Beatty making that transition to second base. How'd he do? How'd he look? The answer is he looked good. The answer is Brett Beatty became like a legitimate, real-life, not too bad defensive second baseman. He turned into that. So can he turn into a average left fielder? Can he turn into an average first baseman? It's not ideal. It doesn't fit the whole run prevention narrative, but you can prevent runs. You got to score runs. And I would argue whatever loss you're going to take defensively, you'll gain by adding a bat like Bichette. And the other thing you don't want to do is force yourself or convince yourself to acquire an outfielder because you're so short on outfielders when you could acquire a better infielder and move someone else to the outfield. The other option is Polanco. Like, can Jorge Polanco play left field? We're talking about Polanco playing first base. He hasn't played first base. So if we're already going down the road of learning new positions, why not that? And I'll leave it up to the Mets and to Kai Correa and David Stearns on who fits best where. But yes, it would mean Jorge Polanco and Brett Beatty are out of position. I totally get that. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. But is it ideal where we're sitting right now? I think it's worth thinking about. I think if you can get Bichette on a short-term, high AAV deal, he is the guy. The reason, again, Bellinger, who I know is a great fit based on his ability to play first base and play the outfield, I get it, his ability to play in New York, which he's already shown, is I don't see the avenue where he's here. I mean, are they going to try a short-term high AAV deal with him? Are they going to break their rules and go long-term? Which, if they do, shows a lack of vision, honestly. As much as it would make some people happy and say, screw it, go give Cody Bellinger 7 years. Give Scott Boras what he wants. Doesn't it show that this front office would have absolutely no vision because they were so steadfast for the last 3 years? They were so steadfast on Pete Alonso. Now all of a sudden they're desperate. And because they're desperate, they're going to break their rules. So I'd be very mixed about it. I've said that before. Like, yes, the Mets would be better, and that would excite me. But it wouldn't really show a consistent vision. So to me right now, where I stand, I think the pivot is Bo Bichette. If it's not Bo Bichette, and it's not Cody Bellinger, you are looking at either trades we don't see coming or just solid major leaguers like Austin Hayes, who, yes, is an outfielder, and yes, they could use right now, but there are holes in this lineup. And this is where I guess I'll argue with a lot of the new age statistical baseball fans, because there's no stat to back this up. This is me speaking, I guess, as an old school baseball fan, or I guess as a guy that watches the team every day. They also just don't have protection for their stars. Right now, they've got two legitimate superstar players who can wreck a game and be MVP caliber in Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, not to take anything away from them. And after that, unless Marcus Semien is reverting back to his form from a few years ago, and that is very naive to believe that's going to happen, there is a massive drop-off. And so somebody is going to have Jorge Polanco or Marcus Semien hitting behind them. And that means they're not getting pitches to hit. So I'm worried about Juan Soto or Francisco Lindor that they're going to be pitched around constantly. Like, you need another thumper in this lineup, even if it isn't the same as the kind of thumper that Pete Alonso was. You just need better players. As we stand right now, what's their outfield? And I get it. Well, it doesn't stand right now. I've used the analogy, it's a painting, and the painting isn't done yet, and the offseason's incomplete, and you got to give it time. Okay, we got a month. And we see what's left on the racks. We see what's left in terms of free agency and trades. There ain't a lot. Luis Robert Jr., we have been linked to him for a long time. A lot of Met fans don't want the player. There is major downside to him because for the last 2 years, he's been awful. Of course, I'm willing to take the risk. I'm willing to take the risk because I think at this point, you need more options in your outfield. You cannot assume Carson Bench is just going to hit right away. He didn't hit AAA last year. I don't know if Carson Bench is ready. As high as David Stearns may be on him, we think Carson Bench is ready. We think Jet Williams is ready to be an everyday outfielder. Do we know that? Here's what I know about what they currently have. Juan Soto is all-world, and Tyrone Taylor's a fourth outfielder. That's what I know. He's an excellent defender, and I would have had zero issue with Tyrone Taylor getting a ton of innings and at-bats early in the season if you had Soto and Tucker flanking him in the corner outfield spots. But now, what is it? Who's there? So it is a frustrating day to be a Met fan. It has been a frustrating offseason to be a Met fan. But right now, it's not simply about Tucker. It's the whole picture. Now, let me read some of your emails. There were plenty of them over the last 12 hours. And again, if you need an excuse or you're curious of an excuse on why there was no Rico on that crazy Thursday night, I went to bed at about 9:30. And I told Hoff, I said, call me if the Tucker news breaks, which he did. I slept through his phone call. So it is what it is. But I went to bed, not thinking a decision was going to go down on Thursday night, thinking, it'll probably leak into Friday. And also so I could wake up and watch the Knicks early, which, by the way, I haven't even done. I woke up, I get engulfed by the Tucker news. I'm like, oh, crap, we got to do a Rico. Is Hoffman up? And we finally got it posted if you're watching it live on YouTube at about 7:30 in the morning, and hopefully you're downloading it and enjoying your Friday. So I did not get to enjoy this or suffer from this in real time. I woke up to it, and it is all the fault of Moses Moody, Steph Curry, and the Golden State Warriors. Anyhow, let me read your emails. I have not edited these, so I'm just going straight through to see what the people think. TheRicoB@gmail.com. I'll go more in depth on this or talk more about this on Evan and Tiki at 10 a.m. on The Fan, also on YouTube. I don't know if you guys realize that. The show is now entirely on YouTube. I still prefer you listen on the radio because we're a radio show. Just like even the podcast. I prefer you listen via podcast, but hey, YouTube's here. Do what you want with it. Kyle writes, I came into the offseason wanting them to get younger I came into the offseason wanting them to get younger so I agree with you about that too. This is why I got to edit emails because I have no idea what the start is. None of what's happened this offseason really has bothered me outside of losing Edwin Diaz. I also agree that the Dodgers are leagues more attractive. I mean, the Mets offered no deferrals and a $75 million signing bonus. But that's why I think what Stearns is doing actually makes sense. It clears It's clear that both he and Cohen know that building through free agency, when you're trying to build a consistent winner, is not necessarily sustainable. You can do that more effectively when that consistent winning has already started because you become more desirable to that class of player. But this team has made the playoffs, what, twice in the last 10 years? I'm truly in favor of resetting the players and contracts and starting to see what pops of the players who will be in 2026. Too many of us have expectations for this team that are out of line with the reality of this roster. This is Stearns' third offseason and the first where he actually has the ability to shed some of the contracts from the previous regime. Now he's really on the clock and what I'm looking forward to. And let's be honest, this free agent class in next year's wasn't all that great anyway. Well, I would say next year's, the year after's not that great. This year's was pretty good. Pete Alonso, Kyle Schwarber, Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger. I don't believe there are many players in free agency over the next 3 years as good as those players. Here is my issue with this, Kyle, and this actually, I'm going to give you a jet analogy. When you draft somebody and you develop somebody, the idea of then trading them is very depressing. And I'll show you an example of where I was dead wrong. Jamal Adams, right? The Jets traded Jamal Adams. They got a ton of picks back. It actually worked. Jamal fell off the roof. I don't like the idea of successfully using a first-round pick, drafting a good player, a guy who becomes a good player, and then saying, I don't want to pay him. Let's start over. Like almost resetting what you just did. So when you talk about player development, let's see what we've got. A few of the players that they shed are players that they developed. And it doesn't mean you have to keep every single player that you develop, but do you see my point? Even if it doesn't work 1,000% with what happened this offseason? Like, yeah, you want to develop your own players, and that's the key to success, even if that's not how the Dodgers have been built the last couple of years. But you also want to compete in free agency, and you have to have the vision to look ahead and know that there isn't a guy sitting there next year. Now, I remember when we were sitting here during the offseason of 23 into 24. We knew Juan Soto was available the following year. And so some of our moves or lack thereof moves was met with, that's okay, look who's available next year. Now, we have that when it comes to pitching because obviously Tarek Skubal's available amongst others and the starting pitching market is very appealing next year and the year after. But we don't have that when it comes to position players. Danny writes, the issue is not Kyle Tucker. He is a very good player. The analytics love him. But we know his warts. He doesn't play enough games. He's questionable in a big market like New York. Heck, we didn't actually know if he wanted to play here. The problem, Evan, is the approach. When you wait until the middle of January and go all in essentially on a question mark, passing up other options along the way, whether it's Kyle Tucker or some of the pitchers that were on the market compared to what is available now, you're playing with fire. You cannot tell me that you're comfortable giving Kyle Tucker this kind of money and have zero interest in bringing back your franchise's greatest slugger. You cannot tell me that David Stearns completely botched the Edwin Diaz negotiation. You and other fans can blame Diaz. Our incomplete bullpen is not Edwin Diaz's fault. It's David Stearns. First of all, I've said that. So do not confuse me with others. I have put the Diaz debacle on the arrogance of the negotiations. And guess who probably agrees with me if you give him truth serum? David Stearns. If they could go back in time, this is where we're going to disagree with this administration. If we could go back in time, I bet you they wouldn't do a damn thing different with Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber. Not a damn thing different. But when it comes to Diaz, they would. I mean, when you look at the final product of the Diaz contract, they were right there. They were probably too arrogant in their negotiations. In the Alonso case, they would never given him 5 years. And I wonder, because what I said at the beginning of this, Rico, in terms of Pete was, if we're going to agree with them, okay, fine, don't give them 5 years. By the way, I disagree with that, but I don't want to refight this again. Then at least give them the short-term monster AAV offer. Because I'll ask you this. Kyle Tucker's a better player than Pete Alonso. Fine. Fine. Despite the fact that Pete Alonso plays more. Despite the fact that Pete Alonso has proven he can play in New York. Forget all that. Doesn't matter. Kyle Tucker, yes, analytically better player than Pete Alonso. Is he better to the level of, we'll offer Kyle 50, actually 60 in year one, but we won't offer Pete 40? That's where I disagree. That's where the Mets could have said, all right, Pete, we're not giving you 5. Here's 3 years, $120 million. And for anyone who says that's absurd, What's the Tucker offer? And the Tucker offers more. So I'm giving you that Tucker's the better player. I'm not even arguing that. I'm saying I'll give him less than Tucker, but I'll come in with the same kind of idea. And they never did that. And I don't know with truth serum if they ever would do that. Anyhow, let me finish Danny's email. You and other fans can blame Diaz. I have not blamed Diaz. I blame Stearns, but whatever. Our incomplete bullpen is not Edwin Diaz's fault. It's David Stearns. It's his approach. Like your old partner says, he thinks he's smarter than everyone. It's amazing that he has this tendency to make risky moves, overpaying with $34 million last year to Frankie Montas, the Simeon trade this year, which handcuffs probability to pursue other options like Bo Bichette or a trade for Ketel Marte, and finds himself shorthanded later in the season. Bleep, this happened years ago, James McCann versus JT Realmuto. Obviously, that wasn't Stearns' fault, but my point is timing is everything. Your approach matters. Stearns' approach stinks, and I'm afraid, Evan, so will the Mets in 2026. Steve writes, the pivot. Yeah, let's get into the pivot, because that's really, once we pick up the wreckage of Kyle Tucker and everything we're relitigating, it really is about what's next. Honestly, like everything else is just feel bad for us. This is why I'm angry. Like, dude, it doesn't matter. It's over. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it because I do think it's important to get it out of our system. But the pivot matters. Here's Steve's pivot. Can Jorge Polanco play left field? I've got more faith in him doing that than playing first base. Now that Boston has a huge hole at third base, there's got to be a Mark Vientos for Jarren Duran trade that makes sense, perhaps with a few tweaks. Suarez and Arise on 2-year deals are going to happen somewhere. Why not us? Jarren Duran, great thought. Let's think about this for a second. Are the Red Sox still engaging in him? Are the Red Sox willing to move him? What would the Red Sox want for him? Does a Mark Vientos or a Brett Beatty make sense in a trade? Is that enough? Probably not. What would it take? Does Ronnie Mauricio appeal to them? What fits on a Met Red Sox trade? And I do think that's worth giving thought to. Jarren Duran, with all due respect, though, is not Kyle Tucker. He is not Alonso. He's not a big bat that offers protection. But look, you got to do things differently. He's a good player. He's a really solid player. He's a good outfielder. Despite that miscue he made in the wild card series against the Yankees, that drop fly ball in left field, he's a good defender. He's an upgrade. Yes, he's another left-hander. I would be interested in Jarren Duran, and I wonder, and maybe I've got to ask Jared Carabas, put him on the phone, maybe do a crossover with him and ask him, what works for you? I'm not trying to make insulting offers. I get it, but Red Sox know their team better than we do. What's the fit? Is there a fit? Suarez and Arise. They improved the lineup. I mean, Suarez gives you that right-handed slug, which they can definitely use. So I think in terms of fitting in this lineup, Suarez fits better. But then I guess it goes to where? Does he play first base? Is he just your DH? So again, you're dealing with the issue of you're not improving yourself defensively. If anything, you're getting worse. And what are you really doing? Like, you're improving the lineup, but how are you making this work? Robert writes, we were used. Hi, Evan. It has to be obvious by now that Kyle Tucker and more likely Scott Boras used us all along to get the biggest contract from the evil empire. Let me correct you. Scott Boras does not represent Kyle Tucker. I think it is Casey Close who represents Kyle Tucker. I think part of the using is because David Stearns doesn't have the testicular circumference to stand up and give a final offer 1 hour, decide it, take it or leave it. I'm sure he already talked to his family about New York and how much it would take. Instead, he let them run back to the Dodgers and get a bigger contract. I would have settled for a $35 million fifth year if it meant we were in position to win now. Now you look around and there's no one you can plug into this lineup that gives you the kind of boost, and there's none on the horizon for 2 more years. That smoke our owner spoke of is the Mets season burning to the ground before it even starts. Interested to hear what your opinion is on the matter when you Rico this. Thanks for being the voice of Met fans. Thank you. I'm not the voice of Met fans. I'm one voice amongst Met fans. There is no singular voice of a fandom. I offer my opinion, and sometimes it's in the vast minority. Sometimes it's in the majority. In the case of Kyle Tucker, I want to make this clear because I am pissed at David Stearns about the Diaz handling, which we talked about, how I would have handled Alonso differently. So everything is talked about on its own. I don't believe they screwed up the Kyle Tucker negotiations, which is why I'm not angry at the Mets about missing Kyle Tucker. I'm angry at the Mets about the position they're in when they missed out on Kyle Tucker. So respectfully, I don't think there's much they could have done different other than just simply bidding higher. And my question would be, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say it's not worth it? We already gave you $50 million or $60 million in year one and year two. Pete Hoffman, I give him a lot of credit. He did call me last night and say, hey, Evan, wake up, let's do a Rico. I was fast asleep. I did the opposite at 5 a.m. I woke up and called Hoff. But here we are. How you feeling?
Oh, miserable. But, dude, I got to be honest with you. I can't add much to this because you nailed everything that I've been feeling this entire time. Maybe I had some premonitions, but you nailed everything. Like, I'm not even pissed that the Mets missed out on Kyle Tucker. It's how this offseason's been handled. It's really frustrating. And here we go. We're in a spot where we still haven't improved the pitching. And, like, say we miss out on Bo Bichette, say we miss out on Cody Bellinger or the big free agents, and all of a sudden we're back in this mode of, well, the next best thing, the only free agent available, Framber Valdez, we get him. And they sign him to either a 3-year deal for $150 million or, say, a 5-year deal for $130 million, whatever it is. Those are two things that David Stearns did not want to do for anybody else besides Kyle Tucker, so far as 3-year deal with a big AAV. Like, you dropped the ball on everybody else. This is desperate moves by our man. I'm losing faith in him.
I don't think he's going to make a desperate move because even this Tucker negotiation, some have framed it as desperate. It really wasn't, because if the owner's willing to deck out a lot of money, which he's done, you're still keeping to your principles of a short-term contract. So I didn't even look at the Tucker negotiation as desperation. Desperation would have been giving him 9 years, which they didn't do. So as I look at the final month of free agency, I don't think they're signing Framber Valdez. First of all, I don't think they're signing Framber Valdez, period. I really don't. And I really don't think they're signing Framber Valdez on a contract they're not comfortable with. Like, if they end up signing Valdez and I'm wrong, it's going to be because there was no market and Framber had to settle for what I like to call the Stearns contract, which is a 3-year deal. Look at Minaya, look at Montas, look at Clay Holmes, look at every starting pitcher they've added. It's been 3 years or less. So I doubt Framber Valdez is going to be the exception. But as desperate as I am, as desperate as you are, I don't necessarily think this offseason is going to feature moves that are desperate. Even the Bichette idea I gave earlier, I'm not sure if you heard it, which is short-term high AAV. That fits what they're doing, what they're trying to do. And that's my move. Like, I guess Cody Bellinger fits better, but I just don't see it. Like, I don't see how they would be able to get him unless they truly break from their principles. And I think Bichette has more of a chance to be drawn in by a short-term deal based on his age, based on enhancing his value, which he could do over the next couple of years. So I think he's more realistic, even if I have no idea if the Mets are interested. I'm just using logic to dictate why he would accept a short-term deal. But if you're expecting the Mets to now do something desperate, I don't think they are. And it's going to lead us going into spring training. Not that the Mets are going to suck, because they're not. I'm not going to go into the year thinking we're going to lose 90 games. I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to think, because this is the way I feel currently about the roster. They have a lot of upside, but there's a ton of questions. So yes, and these are ifs, by the way, these are not predictions. If Francisco Alvarez blossoms into what we think, if Carson Bench is a Rookie of the Year candidate, if Brett Beatty continues to take a step forward, if Nolan McLean is the ace we think he can be, if all of that happens plus, yeah, the Mets could be damn good. But that's a lot of ifs, man, and it's very tough to go into a season with confidence when you're relying on as many ifs as the New York Mets have. So no, this is not a hopeless season. This is not 2012. We've had hopeless seasons, and it almost offends me when people think it is. I've seen hopeless. You've seen hopeless. I've seen Dylan G as our best starting pitcher. I've seen Chris Young as our big offseason addition. Like, don't tell me it's more hopeless than before. It's just not good.
Yeah, but here I'm not saying it's hopeless. However, we're not even, we're like maybe we're a playoff contender. Maybe. Like, that's where we're at right now. That's the way I view the team. And you could add Bichette to that and still be like, okay, maybe we're a playoff contender with that too. But it's not good enough, unfortunately. And you've seen teams in the past. You've seen teams in the past. We're better than a lot of bad teams. That's fine. It's the top teams that we need to compete with.
I am going to annoy you so much when I say this. And I'm going to annoy a lot of people in the audience when I say this. And I'm literally just making a prediction on something that's going to happen in the next few weeks. I'm not the one doing it. I'm just telling you this is what I think is going to happen. When they come out with those Zips predictions, with the projections for the 2026 season, it will have the Mets as a playoff team. And I know that boggles our minds. I know. Hoff, I don't even feel that way either because there's a lot of questions. But I'm telling you, the projections on the Mets are going to be a lot higher than we feel as fans. And that's not to make anyone feel better because it don't make me feel better. I am not saying this to make myself feel better. I'm just telling you that the view, not just internally from David Stearns, but the view externally from the lack of the non-emotional baseball person is actually going to be, yeah, they're not as bad as the fans think. With that said, of course we feel that way. You lost Alonso, you lost Nimmo, you lost Edwin Diaz, and yes, Polanco, Simeon, fine, Devin Williams, fine. It doesn't feel like they're better. And their rotation crumbled last year, and they haven't added anything to it. So I know why we don't feel that way, but mark my words, I'd be surprised if they're not.
You're gonna you don't kill me for this, but you take away, say if Soto or Lindor gets hurt.
Well,
and I hate to do that, but are they still going to be projected as that team?
I mean, if Aaron Judge gets hurt, what are the Yankees projected to be?
They still make the playoffs every year.
With Aaron Judge hurt?
Oh,
did you see what happened 2 years ago? They didn't make the playoffs.
He missed 10 games last year.
Stop it. Stop it. So my endorsement, because I've heard David Stearns listens to the Rico, my endorsement is let's go after Bo Bichette. Short-term, high AAV. Let's see if we could add him. Beatty to first base or left field. I know it's not ideal, but again, the Mets are already playing with a first baseman. That's not a first baseman. And we go from there. Because right now, this offseason continues to get worse, with the latest being that Kyle Tucker's going to the Dodgers. And that's the other thing. I mean, it's baseball, and I will argue this with Tiki and anyone else. You are never a sure thing to win a World Series because of the way the sport is built and the randomness of best of 5 and best of 7. But in my lifetime, and this includes the Yankees, the 98 Yankees, the 99 Yankees, it includes them, there has never been in my mind a greater disparity, talent-wise, between the top team and everybody else. And that's the world we're living in. And I will leave you with this one final, absolutely ridiculous but positive thought for those that think I'm too negative. Can you imagine beating the LA Dodgers in the playoffs this year? Could you imagine watching Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz and Mookie Betts and that Shohei Ohtani walking off the field like losers? Yeah, I can't imagine it either. I'm just saying it'd be really cool. That's all I'm saying. Anyhow, we appreciate you listening to the Rico. We will do a mailbag coming up shortly, so throw in your emails, your thoughts on the Tucker miss, obviously what to do next, which is what I'm most interested in. What I am most interested in is what do we do next? What's the pivot? The Rico B at gmail.com. And we'll talk about this more live on WFAN on Friday at 10 a.m. If you missed that, you can always rewind on the Odyssey app. Thank you very much for listening, hanging out with us on, I think, our first ever live morning edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.